What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and I am back with my Week 8 battle of the NPL. This week we are against Gypsy King, the king himself, widely considered the best player in draft format, period. So, of course, we have our hands full this week, and it's especially tough coming off of a rough loss last week against Moxie Infernape and the Baltimore Braviers. You can see the standings in front of you right now. From the result of one game, we were in 3rd place in the entire league. Now we are in 5th place in our conference and in 8th place, I believe, in the entire league. And only the top 4 from each conference make playoffs. So the result of one game has put me in this position where at the moment I cannot make playoffs. But I still have this game and 2 others, of course, to go to try to earn that playoff spot back. But we are against Gypsy. Picking up a win against Gypsy is obviously never going to be easy. Plus, we need to talk about this a little bit because there's a little bit of strategy that's going to be going into the prep for this game and how I'm actually going to be playing it out and how this video is actually going to play out as well. So if I do manage to make playoffs, it would likely be in the 4 seed as Cheese Boy, Phoenix Sunkern currently 6-1. You have Gypsy and Verd, who are both currently 5-2. With my 4-4 record and pretty poor differential overall, it would be very tough for me to catch them, and I can only assume that if I were to make playoffs, it would be in the 4 seed. Now, if I do make playoffs and hit the 4 seed, I still anticipate Gypsy to be the number 1 seed in my conference, meaning that he would be my opponent in the first round of playoffs if I were to make playoffs. So this becomes tricky, right? Because I need to win this game to have the best chance possible to make playoffs. But if I prep to my absolute best, bring my absolute best team against Gypsy and lose, and then still end up making playoffs by winning my last 2 games, then I've already showed my hand and have very little chance of beating him in playoffs. So this is very tricky for me in terms of how I want to approach this, and I am going to take the safest route in the long term, which means that I'm actually not going to bring my best in this matchup. I'm bringing a good team. I'm not going to throw, not even close. The team I'm going to bring is very good, but it is not my best. And that is risky because it's going to leave me vulnerable to certain sets that he might have, and I will try to discuss this as the battle moves forward. I don't want to go into too much detail, though, on the team builder itself, just because I want to keep as much secrecy as possible, just in case I do get that opportunity to face him in playoffs in the postseason. So, just a little bit of a heads up there. You won't see nearly as much detail from me in terms of my team builder. In fact, I'm not even going to show my EV spreads for this particular battle just because I want to maintain that secrecy. I'm sorry to those of you who really wanted to see those sets, and if you still want to see them, I'll happily show them to you after my season is over. Just feel free to hit me up on Discord or YouTube or Twitter or wherever, and I'll be happy to show you anything that you wanted to see in terms of my sets. But that's just a little bit of a heads up for how this is going to be structured. So I will very briefly discuss his team before I move into the battle, since I will be skipping over the team builder portion. But my opponent Gypsy has access to Lando T, which is his Z captain, Celesteela, Mega Diancie, Hydreigon, Tangrowth, Suicune, Gothitelle, Quillfish, Alolan Persian, Piloswine, Togetic, and that's all. So his team is top heavy, and that's, I think, been his biggest struggle this season. Not that he struggled really much at all, but his team is top heavy, and with that in mind, if I'm able to prep accordingly for his powerful offense, then I should be able to deal well with the team as a whole, although his defensive core is pretty disgusting as well. I'm trying to be really careful what I say here, though, because I really don't want to say too much of my own insight on this matchup just in case. But yeah, he obviously has some big threats to my team. Obviously, the Lando T is a big threat. It's naturally a big threat against anybody. Mega Diancie is super hard for me to switch into. I don't have really good switch-ins at all. Most people don't, to be fair, but even so, it's a pretty massive threat against my team. And the Hydreigon as well could be... It's tough for me to switch into. Its speed tier isn't too great, so that's why I kind of expect to see a Choice Scarf if he brings Hydreigon, but yeah... Celesteela as well is really annoying for my team defensively and even offensively as well. You saw in my battle against Shoddy most likely that Skarm wasn't exactly easy for me to deal with, just based upon being forced to bring specific coverage for the Skarmory whenever I really didn't want to bring that coverage versus the rest of his team. In a sense, that also applies here against Gypsy, but a little less so because he does share more weaknesses with his Flying Steel type than Shoddy did on his team. But like I said, this is going to be really concise. I don't really want to give out too many of my thoughts on this, but basically my approach for this game, let's talk about the strategy a little bit for this particular game. Because I don't want to bring my best, but I still want a chance to win, I have to catch him off guard. And what I've noticed about Gypsy throughout this season and the last, pretty much period, whenever he plays draft format, he likes to take his time, okay? And in the NPL, we do have a policy where we are allowed to turn on the battle timer if one coach wants it, basically. It's required to be on if a coach demands that it's on. And what I want to do in this matchup is I want to bring the most aggressive team I can possibly bring against him and turn the battle timer on and really pressure him as much as possible. And you won't really get that full effect because this is going to be a post-com of the battle, but that was the strategy that I went with for this game. It wasn't to bring the best team possible, it was to bring the most aggressive team possible and to turn the timer on and see how he deals with the heat and the pressure. And, you know, we'll see how that goes, but that's generally what I'm doing here. And what you'll see with the team that I bring is that it's pretty much all offensive. I had a couple pivots that were more bulky, but for the most part it was entirely an offensive team, and the general game plan was to win with the weakness policy Terrakion, which, you know, let's just hop on over to the game and we'll see how this actually goes down here. So as you can see, my opponent brought the Hydreigon, Lando T, Togetic, Celesteela, Mega Diancie, and the Tangrowth. By looking at this team, obviously the Togetic is a Violite. It looks like his superior response. The Mega Diancie is probably just offensive. Looking at his team, it might be the Rocker as well, as I do anticipate the Lando to either be Choice Scarfed as well, or maybe more of a setup variant. I expect the Hydreigon to be Choice Scarfed. The Celesteela could either be Spadef for the superior, or it could be offensive. It's really tough to know based upon his team composition. And the Tangrowth I expect to almost certainly be Rocky Helmet to help him chip down my Terrakion, which otherwise is a big threat against the team because he does not have a rock resist. So just to very briefly go over my sets as far as what was actually revealed in the battle. Rotom was bulky, somewhat offensive with an Expert Belt. The superior had knockoff for potential switch-ins as well as expected coverage moves for the rest of his team. The Terrakion was double dance with rock coverage for everything, basically, with the weakness policy, like I said before. Mega Houndoom, pretty standard set overall. The Jirachi was Shookaberry to help out versus the Lando T, as well as potentially the Mega Diancie, and the Crobat was specially offensive Life Orb with some pretty nice coverage moves for his team. So pretty vague, but I'm sure you kind of understand why I'm keeping it that way, just in case I do get that matchup against him in playoffs as well. So we're going to go ahead and start this game off. My best lead against him absolutely is the Rotom Wash, because immediately what that allows me to do is likely Volt Switch on his incoming Tangrowth, as it matches up well against literally everything else on his team. If he decides to lead off with the Scarf Hydreigon, then I have other ways to deal with that as well that I will not reveal here in this commentary because they don't really come into play. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and hop right on into this, and we'll see that my opponent Gypsy is going to actually lead off with the Mega Diancie, so fully expecting him to either protect or to just switch straight into his Tangrowth. I'm going to Volt Switch as he stays in to put up his Rock, so he gets me on turn 1 here. If I just went for a Hydro Pump, this would have been guaranteed gone, which would have been really nice for my team late game. As here, going to my Superior to offensively force him out, expecting him to go into Togetic. I'm just going to go for the knockoff on the switch in, which is pretty nice, gets rid of that Violet and makes it much easier to wear down late game. This reveals I am a Life Orb Superior, so that certainly is a threat to him later on, as here my Rotom is a pretty free switch in to the Togetic as he pulls a double into Celesteela. Now this is the point where, at the beginning of the game, honestly, the first couple turns, despite him getting turn 1 correct and getting up his rocks and saving his Mega Diancie, I still felt like I was in a good position because I had momentum and the Togetic did not have its Violet anymore. The Superior and the Mega Houndoom were looking really threatening against his team, but this play changes the game entirely, alright? My game plan going in, like I said before, was Weakness Policy, Double Dance, Terrakion. And my win con, rather, was that. And what you'll see here is this is actually a Totemize Weakness Policy Celesteela, catching my Volt Switch here and triggering the Weakness Policy as it goes for an Autotomize. Now the issue, I'll pause once again, the issue with the team that I brought, the risk that I took in this aggressive team that I brought against him, is that I do not deal well with speed setup sweepers. If he were to bring Rock Polish Lando T against this, if he were to bring Autotomize Celesteela, if he were to bring Rock Polish Mega Diancie, all of those are incredible against this particular team that I brought. But that was the risk I took. If he did not bring a set like that, I could have definitely overwhelmed him with pressure, maybe even to the point where he wouldn't have been able to set up that +2, but Celesteela naturally, of course, is bulky enough to take those hits, and what I really should have done is play differently around it, given what the Rotom set was, and just some of my other options. I could have gone for maybe a Hydro first to scout for if he was weakness policy, stuff like that. That would have been a smarter play on my end, especially because he did have the Togetic to help him deal with the Superior and Mega Houndoom in theory, or Mega Houndoom, specifically the Superior, which is what I thought the Celesteela would be trying to wall. So I should have really thought about that mid-game, but the weakness policy here into the Autotomize is definitely going to cause me some issues in this game for sure, as now I'm kind of scrambling because there's a chance I could just get 6-0'd right here, honestly, since I did not bring anything to outpace this. I'm just going to fire off an Icy Wind, hoping it would be a 2-hit KO against his spread, and unfortunately it's not even close, and he's pretty free to just set up another Autotomize here. But the worst case scenario, or I guess the best case scenario for me at this point, actually, now that I'm not going to be able to survive any hit from this, and now that I have him at only +2 speed, is to go straight into my Crobat and hope I outspeed this. If he is more bulky, which fortunately for me he is, he's less speed and more bulky, which I kind of expected based upon the damage that I'd seen from the Jirachi and Rotom, then my Crobat was able to outspeed this, which is definitely pretty nice. So here, I'm just going to sack off my Crobat, fire off an Air Slash against the lightweight Scarf Hydreigon, which is exactly what he is. This is a free switch into my Terrakion. I easily could have clicked Close Combat, but I expected him to go hard into his Lando T to deny that and maybe try to set up in my face and counter sweep me, so I go for an SD, but he makes a very good play, a Gypsy-like play, goes hard into the Mega Diancie, not fearing anything, and this forces me to sack something else off. I really needed to get rocks up with this Jirachi to be able to win the game with my offensive options, and as you'll see here, he has pressured me so much. That Jirachi is pressured insanely hard, to the point where if I switched out there, I lost something to a Draco Meteor. If I let Jirachi in, I still died to a Draco Meteor, and it just wasn't looking like I was going to be able to get rocks up on anything unless it was the Togetic, but knowing Gypsy, he would not let me do that anyways, so, or even the Tank Growth for that matter. So yeah, it was looking really tough to get the rocks up, but what you're going to see now is I make a double into my Superior with my Terrakion when I probably should have made the double into my Mega Houndoom. That was a misplay there. I tried to cancel, but I didn't have time to do it unfortunately. But just one of those plays. I think I actually kind of hurt myself a little bit with that aggressive timer strategy, as we were both getting a little bit low on time. I didn't want to waste time myself. I wanted to force him to make moves as fast as possible. So I didn't really think that play through as much as I should have. I should have doubled into my Mega Houndoom instead of my Superior, because as you'll see here, it still does a lot to the Togetic on switch, and I would have been able to basically save the Superior for later in the game, giving me a nice check to Mega Diancie. As you're seeing now that I'm super weak to Mega Diancie. I don't have switch into it anymore, and every time Hydreigon comes in, I lose a Pokemon as well. So, you know, strategy is not really working out as well as I had envisioned, but that does come down to not having rocks on the field, because if rocks were on the field, this Hydreigon would get worn down much more quickly, and I don't see him clicking Defog, honestly. I guess he might click it with the Togetic in a last-ditch effort, but getting the rocks back up isn't super hard against the Togetic either, as when the Eviolite is gone, my Jirachi, I believe, can force it out and beat it 1v1 given my set. So, yeah, we are going to end up losing this game here very quickly, as I try to predict the switch into the Hydreigon or Tank Growth and go for a Signal Beam with my Rotom. As he just U-turns, goes into the Mega Diancie, and that will clean up the game. So we do get 4-0'd here, we kind of get bopped, but not the worst thing in the world, because it was a risk that I took that did not work out as well as it could have. Again, if he did not bring a speed setup sweeper, I'm actually pretty confident in this team's ability to have been able to take him on, at least make it a close game, maybe be able to pull it out if we can outplay him late game. But even so, a loss is a loss, unfortunately, but that does not mean we are out of the playoff picture. We do have 2 more games ahead of us. We have a game against Razor and the Chicago Bewares. Couldn't get that out of my mouth for some reason. And then we have a game against Rob Jr. and the Gotham City Golurks. Both of those games are winnable. They are hard games. Nothing's easy in the NPL, obviously, but they are winnable games. And if I'm able to win both of those games, then I should still be able to make playoffs and have that shot at a rematch against Gypsy, which does make me happy that I opted to not reveal my top strategy against him in this week. So definitely a more concise video here this week in terms of the battle, but I hope you still did enjoy, and I hope you did still understand the thought process as to why I approached the game the way I did, why I took this pretty large risk with this team that I brought and used the strategy that I did. So, hope you did enjoy. Thanks for watching. Of course, good game to Gypsy. Make sure to check him out. He will be linked in the description below. Like I said, widely considered the best draft player, period, right now. And if you're not already familiar with him, go give him a look. You will learn a lot by watching his videos. He's just so consistent, man. That's his thing. He's super consistent, so make sure to go give him a look. But thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next week. Peace.